The wife of a man accused of killing a Toronto police officer is testifying at his murder trial today. We'll have the latest on the Umar Zamir case.
Canada is condemning an airstrike launched by the Israeli military, which killed 7 aid workers in the Gaza Strip. A dual Canadian-American citizen is believed to be among the dead.
And a special weather statement is in effect for the GTA. This is a live look at Nathan Phillips Square. Environment Canada says an early spring storm is expected to bring strong winds and rain today and tomorrow.
Good afternoon and welcome to CP24 Live at Noon. I'm Bakari Savage.
And I'm Lena Latafat. Thanks so much for joining us. A potent early spring storm is expected to move into the GTA today.
Environment Canada has issued a special weather statement. It warns of strong winds and rain today and tomorrow, possibly wet snow tomorrow night and Thursday. The showers are expected to begin midday today and continue through the afternoon. The winds, they're going to intensify throughout the day. The temperature will be below normal at 6 degrees. The normal is 8.1. The soggy weather continues tomorrow with a rain-snow mix or wet flurries moving in Thursday. 6 degrees tomorrow for your high, just 3 degrees on Thursday, but it's going to warm up for the weekend. And
Environment Canada senior climatologist Dave Phillips joined us with more on what to expect.
It's just not April showers. I mean, this is significant. It's an event that really started off the coast of California in the Pacific. It did a real huge hit on California and then has come across moved eastward. It's been sort of re-energized on Colorado. So it's a Colorado low that is bringing a lot of weather misery to the United States. And we're going to feel the effects of it here in Ontario and Quebec. It's a lot of uncertainty.
Look, some people are taking advantage of the strong winds today. Surfers hit the water to catch some waves at the beach this morning. Other people got out for a walk on the boardwalk ahead of the wet weather.
Also making news, the wife of the man accused of killing a Toronto police officer is testifying in court today.
Yeah, Ida Sheikh was with her husband and child in the vehicle that fatally struck Constable Jeffrey Northrop in the parking garage below City Hall nearly 3 years ago. And this morning, the Crown questioned Sheikh about the events leading up to the incident. She testified that she didn't know Northrop and his partner were police officers when they approached their vehicle dressed in plain clothes that night.
Police have identified a man wanted in a kidnapping and assault in Scarborough. This happened over the weekend.
CP24's Courtney Hills has those details. And Courtney, you just heard from police, right?
That's right, Bakari and Lena. And the details of this all pretty disturbing. As you mentioned, police were notified of the kidnapping over the weekend. As it stands right now, they are still trying to locate the suspect. They know who this individual is, but they're trying to track him down. We'll share with you now a photograph. This is 33-year-old Curtis Beckles, and I want to bring in Constable McCann with Toronto Police. So, Constable, what more can you tell us about the call your officers received on the weekend?
So I can tell you that what happened that day, which we have on March 31st, the officers attended, was that the suspect took the victim, forced her into a vehicle, took her to a location where he attempted to sexually assault her, and then proceeded to assault her. At that time, he then forced her back into the vehicle. At some point, he made a quick stop after driving around for approximately 2 hours. He made a quick stop where the victim was able to get away and contact police. Police attended the scene. The victim had fled the scene and was nowhere in the vicinity of where she was located. The victim was transported to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. I can tell you that the victim and the suspect are known to each other. Okay. So we are still looking for the suspect at this time, like you mentioned. He was last seen in a 2020 Hyundai Tucson with a license plate of DAYW 027. So obviously we're reaching out to the public. If anybody knows his whereabouts, have seen this vehicle, have seen him around, obviously do not approach the suspect. Call police, call 911. If you have information you want to remain anonymous, you can call 222-TIPS, which is Crime Stoppers, or contact the division, which is 416-808-4300.
Given some of the information you received from the victim in this case, is this suspect considered dangerous?
I can't really speak to that, but I would not want people or the public or anyone from the public to approach him. Yes.
And again, that message is out there for the public. Anybody who knows anything to come forward and help in this case.
Absolutely. So if you have any information, please come forward. Every little bit of information can help us. And again, if you do spot the suspect, call 911. Do not approach.
Can you speak to whether this individual is known to police?
I can't speak to that, no.
Okay. Thank you so much, Constable. Certainly appreciate the update. So we, of course, have the photographs. Constable McCann was just speaking to a photograph of the vehicle the suspect was last seen in, along with information on the license plate and a photograph of the suspect. So anybody who knows anything about this, where this individual maybe is asked to come forward. He's facing a number of serious charges here, guys, including kidnapping, sexual assault, and forcible confinement. Over to you.
Those are some very serious charges. Courtney Heels, thanks so much for this. Police have identified a woman found dead in Ajax over the weekend. 45-year-old Jennifer Polak was found with obvious signs of trauma at a home near Hillman Drive and Shoal Point Road. This was on Saturday night. 35-year-old Kyle Severin has been charged with second-degree murder. Police say the accused was the boyfriend of the victim. And a man is dead after a shooting in Niagara Falls last night. Police were called to the area of Epworth Circle and St. Lawrence Avenue just after 6 p.m. for reports of a shooting. When they arrived, they found a man with life-threatening injuries. He was taken to hospital where he was pronounced dead. Niagara police have not released any suspect information.
And a series of grass fires temporarily shut down train lines along the border between Toronto and Vaughan this morning. The crews in both Toronto and Vaughan were called to fires in at least 3 separate locations, including near Steeles Avenue and Highway 400, Keele Street and Steeles Avenue, and Western Road and Steeles Avenue. They had to cut access points through fences in order to get to the fires.
So 3 different locations our crews had to gain access points through fence line and cut their way through areas and stretch lines, supply lines, and additional deploy lines to put fires out in different areas. Very grueling work pulling the fire lines down the tracks.
All trains are now running again. No injuries were reported as a result of the fires.
Well, happening now, there is a rally taking place at City Hall against certain types of evictions.
Yeah, the tenant coalition, No Demevictions, wants the city to take action to protect demevicted tenants and hold developers accountable for growing the long-term stock of rental housing. This is a live look right now. The group says demevictions are on the rise in Toronto, and roughly 100 buildings are now slated for demolition and redevelopment.
The federal Liberals are previewing some of the big programs that will appear in their upcoming budget, and that includes a national school lunch program. This has really been making headlines.
Yeah, so now let's turn to CTV's Scott Hurst with more on that. So, Scott, we just literally heard about this yesterday. So how's the rollout going to look so far? What do we know?
Bakari, this is one of the Liberal government's pre-budget announcements as it tries to gain steam and gain interest and gain traction to some of the announcements that are coming up on the April 16th budget. We're also seeing Prime Minister coming out today talking about housing in the Maritimes and adding money to the Housing Accelerator Fund. But when it comes to the school food program, here's what we know so far, with many more details coming out in a few weeks when the full budget is released. We're talking over $1 billion over 5 years, and Canada at the moment is the only country in the G7 that does not have a national school food program. So the plan is, and the goal is, to provide meals for an additional 400,000 kids a year. Currently, it's a patchwork of government and nonprofit agencies offering school and community food programs across the country, and the Liberals are vowing to work with provinces, territories, and Indigenous partners with the goal of getting this up and running for the start of the September school year. That is the 2024-2025 school year. But of course, lots of coordination is needed. Here's more from the Prime Minister on the announcement of the National School Food Program.
The need is far greater than anyone is able to meet right now. So we're putting $1 billion forward to be sent out to provinces and territories to add 400,000 more kids across the country who will have fuller bellies in class, who will be able to go to school and know that they can focus on reading and learning and playing and not on the grumblings in their bellies. These are choices we are making as a government.
And Bakari and Lena, as we've all been reporting for many weeks and months, food insecurity is a difficult reality for so many Canadians, as we've also been reporting on the significant rise in Canadians needing food banks, and a significant portion of those Canadians are in fact children. And so the focus here is to get more kids to school with full bellies so that they can focus on learning and then have this program rolled out for the start of the next school year. Hopefully, although many of the organizations that work with with these food programs already are already saying a lot more details need to be rolled out so they can start the coordination to ensure that money is doled out to the provinces and that they know how much money is available the first year of this program, guys.
Yeah. Every child deserves a nutritious meal. That is for sure, Scott. I know that you mentioned some of the organizations that are interested in this announcement have questions about what this is going to actually look like. What more are you hearing about in terms of reaction to this announcement?
Bakari and Lena, there's been a lot of reaction to this already, particularly from the child advocate programs and the groups that work with school food programs and community food programs. Of course, they're over the moon over this announcement. They say it is much needed, but also they say that this is a long time coming and way overdue. It had been a Liberal promise for many years, but now there is money attached to it. So hearing from those groups, they're ecstatic over this, but still waiting for a lot more details to ensure that this can get up and running as soon as possible. Guys.
Yeah, and I believe the stat that came out yesterday is that 25% of students are in food insecure households. Okay, CTV, Scott Hurst, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Well, comedian Joe Flaherty, a founding member of the Canadian sketch series SCTV, has died.
His daughter told the Canadian press that Flaherty died yesterday following a brief illness. He spent 7 years at the Second City in Chicago before moving north of the border to help establish the theater's Toronto outpost. He went on to star alongside John Candy and Catherine O'Hara in SCTV about a fictional TV station known as Second City Television that was stacked with buffoons in front of and behind the cameras.
Yeah, life imitating art, or art imitating life.
Absolutely. Well, coming up next on CP24 Live at noon, Canada is calling for full accountability after an Israeli military airstrike killed 7 aid workers, including a Canadian. Reaction is next.
A Canadian dual citizen is reported to be among a group of aid workers killed in an airstrike in Gaza last night.
The World Central Kitchen says workers were delivering food aid that had arrived by sea when their convoy was struck while leaving a warehouse. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says it was an unintended strike by Israeli forces. The aid group has now suspended its operations in Gaza.
At least 7 people are dead, with citizens reportedly from Australia, Poland, and the UK, along with their Palestinian driver.
Now, in a statement, the aid group says its team was traveling in a deconflicted zone in 2 armored cars branded with the WCK logo and a soft-skin vehicle. That statement goes on to say this is not only an attack against WCK, this is an attack on humanitarian organizations showing up in the most dire of situations where food is being used as a weapon of war. This is unforgivable.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says that the airstrike on aid workers never should have happened.
First of all, it is absolutely unacceptable that aid workers were killed by the Israeli Defense Force. This is something that never should have happened, and we are heartbroken for the families and for the organization that has been putting people in harm's way to counter the extraordinarily devastating humanitarian crisis going on in Gaza right now. We obviously need full accountability and investigation in this. There needs to be clarity on how this happened, and we need to make sure that we are pushing continually towards a ceasefire so more aid workers are not in danger as they try to respond to the suffering on the ground in Gaza.
And the military says the investigation will be conducted by an independent expert body.
An incident took place in Gaza that resulted in the tragic death of World Central Kitchen employees as they fulfilled their vital mission of bringing food to people in need. As a professional military committed to international law, we are committed to examining our operations thoroughly and transparently.
And for reaction to this story, we're joined live by retired Major General David Fraser, CTV's military analyst and former commander of NATO forces in southern Afghanistan. Thanks so much for joining us, General. We appreciate your time. The group says members were traveling in a deconflicted zone in cars branded with their logo. What is your initial assessment of what happened?
Well, from the pictures that we're receiving, Bakari, the vehicles are clearly marked. It was supposed to be in a deconflicted zone. The vehicle was purposely, as shown here, that bomb went right into that vehicle. So obviously there was a mistake, or and the Israeli Defense Force got an awful lot to answer for. But it certainly had ramifications around the world, and it stopped humanitarian support dead in its tracks. It's the IDF have got a lot to answer for in this one.
Okay, so Canada's position is a full investigation must take place. Israel has committed to a review. How's that going to happen, especially, when there's the ongoing conflict right now?
It's a great question, and quite frankly, the Israelis seemed immune to what the world is asking and demanding from them. The outrage from today's attack is global. And yet, at the same time, the Israelis continue to prosecute operations in an area where there are millions of people, where there are, relief agencies going in there, and they just don't seem to stop or slow down whatsoever, notwithstanding that there's going to be an independent investigation. These are just words. It's not going to change the course of the war. Israel carries on and killing innocent people.
You talked about aid being halted. The organization has said that it's immediately suspending operations in Gaza. A shipload of aid was turned back just a few hours ago. This is the UN says famine is looming. How do you think this is going to worsen the already awful humanitarian crisis?
Well, you said it right there. What was a trickle is now stopped completely. And, there's probably going to be an awful lot of skepticism about humanitarian groups to go back in there to put their people at risk, to provide the food, much needed food, to a population that's starving to death. And, and this is all in the hands of the Israelis. They've got to answer for this. But at the same time, let's not just, Hamas has got to get the pressure too. Both parties, Hamas and Israel, have got to be, forced to come to a table, to come to some sort of reconciliation for the betterment of people who are starving to death. And, the world should be going after both parties to say enough is enough. This war's got to stop. No one's benefiting from it. But neither side seems to care what's going on. They carry on fighting and pretending to talk.
So what is the next step? What does this look like worldwide in terms of implications? Because we have a Canadian-American citizen, someone from the UK, someone from Australia. Can you talk about the worldwide implications of this?
Well, I think this is where the worldwide diplomacy comes at, and starts talking to the Egyptians, the Qataris, all those agencies that are talking to Hamas, because we don't talk to terrorist organizations. And at the same time, we talk to the Israelis, and we really put the diplomatic arm on them to say, get to the bargaining table and start making some concessions on both sides. We've had enough for both of you. And, doing whatever diplomacy and, up to and including potentially some sort of, measures that actually force these parties to get together and start figuring out the solution.
Major General, I just have to...
had enough.
I'm so sorry to interject. I've just run out of time here. I want to get a quick question in. Do you think this is going to hurt ceasefire talks?
I think it's going to make it a lot harder. Yep, absolutely. Because, Hamas is now going to use this against the Israelis.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Retired Major General David Fraser, CTV's military analyst and former commander of NATO forces in southern Afghanistan. Thanks so much for your time and analysis.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Team, thank you.
And coming up next on CP24 Live at noon, the province is facing criticism over its high school tech education plan.
Welcome back. The province is facing pushback over its proposal to let teachers without technological credentials teach tech courses. The government announced last year that students would have to take a course on technology and the skilled trades in grades 9 or 10 in order to graduate. However, it says it's exploring options to let principals assign teachers with only general education qualifications to instruct these courses. The Ontario Principals Council says there is a shortage of teachers, and creating a new mandatory course is adding to the burden of overworked educators. And for reaction to this, Let's go live to Annie Kidder, Executive Director of the group People for Education. Annie, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. What's going on here, and how much of it has to do with the teacher shortage?
Well, part of it has to do with the teacher shortage for sure, which is something that needs to be addressed in a kind of long-term way, not with Band-Aids. But I think this is also an example. It is really important that kids are taking tech courses, that they have access to hands-on skills and trades. That's very important. But what's been happening over the last year or two is it seems as if there's been a kind of a mishmash of new policies introduced without maybe thinking of it all of a piece. So we already know we've got staff shortages. We've already have principals talking about how much stress the system is under. Now we're going to add another new thing, which may be a good idea. I'm not saying it's not. But we need to make sure that there's a kind of overall coherent plan and vision for education in Ontario. And that seems to be a bit missing right now.
Yeah, Annie, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a teacher and educator right now. Let's say I'm already overburdened and now I have to figure out how to teach this new course, and it's a tech course. Maybe I don't have the proper training for that. How much does that add to the load of educators in our province, and what do you hear from teachers?
Well, we're hearing, again, a lot of stress. And if we think about even thinking about technology and how fast it's changing, about how we need to understand AI and all its uses, these are really important skills for kids to have when they graduate. And it's a great thing to, ask of teachers to learn about this. But we have to, there are people who say that, the devil is always in the details. Implementation is always a really important part of policy changes, and we have to make sure that teachers have time to learn, to think about, to be able to prepare for teaching whole new courses. And right now, doesn't seem as if we've got a good kind of solid foundation to add this onto.
And from a student's perspective, how do you feel about teachers without technological credentials teaching these courses?
Well, we definitely know there are cases where students are going to know more than the teachers do. Again, we have to be thinking about in Ontario, this is our whole next generation we're educating here. We have to be very careful with this. We have to think ahead. And we need to be thinking about the long-term impact. So it might be possible. This is something that maybe we should delay for another year to make sure that we've got, again, this a kind of comprehensive plan, a coherent plan, and that we've consulted with everybody, with students, with teachers, with faculties of education, our teachers being prepared to teach these kinds of courses. But that's what's needed right now in the education system.
Okay. Annie Kidder, Executive Director of the group People for Education. Good to get your perspective. Thanks so much for this.
Thank you very much.
And coming up next on CP24 Live at noon, the wife of the man accused of killing a Toronto police officer is testifying at his murder trial today. We're going to have a live update from the courthouse coming up.
The wife of a man accused of killing a Toronto police officer is testifying at his murder trial today. We're going to have the latest on the Umar Zamir trial.
Police are searching for a suspect after a woman was abducted on the weekend and taken to an address in Scarborough where she was assaulted.
And a special weather statement's in effect for the GTA. Here's a live look at conditions right now. I believe this is Birksea Park, maybe? Environment Canada says that an early spring storm is expected to bring strong winds and rain today and tomorrow.
Good afternoon and welcome to CP24 Live at noon. I'm Lena Latifat.
And I'm Bakari Savage. Police have identified a man wanted in a kidnapping and assault in Scarborough. It happened over the weekend.
CP24's Courtney Heels has been speaking with investigators, and she joins us live with the latest. Courtney.
And Lena, Bakari, police are putting this information out to the public because they're hoping someone will be able to identify where this 33-year-old man is. He is now facing a number of charges in connection to this alleged assault and kidnapping over the weekend. We'll share with you now a photograph of the individual they say they're looking for, 33-year-old Curtis Beckles. Police aren't saying if this man is known to police, but they allege that this man is responsible for this attempt abduction and abduction. They say the suspect in this case found a victim, brought brought her to an area in Scarborough. This was the Rockwood Drive and Kingston Road area. They say he attempted to sexually assault her, then assaulted her, and then forced the woman into a vehicle. And we have a photograph of the vehicle they say is connected to this, and they're trying to track it down. They say the woman drove around in the car for about 2 hours, and then she managed to escape, and she contacted police. Here's what officers have to say about this case and the connection between the two.
The suspect then took off from the scene. Officers did check the area and were unable to locate him, so this is where we're at today. The victim was transported to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. I can tell you that the victim and the suspect are known to each other, and now we're looking for obviously anyone that might have seen this individual, that may know where he's at this time, noticed the vehicle.
And police say this individual they're trying to track down facing a number of charges, including forcible confinement, sexual assault. As they say, they're still trying to figure out where this person is. So they are asking anybody who has any information to come forward and help in this case. Over to you.
Okay, CP24's Courtney Hills live at TPS. Courtney, thank you for this update. Well, police have identified a woman found dead in Ajax over the weekend. 45-year-old Jennifer Pollock was found with obvious signs of trauma at a home near Hillman Drive and Shoal Point Road Saturday night. 35-year-old Cal Severin has been charged with second-degree murder. Police say that the accused was the boyfriend of the victim. And a man's dead after a shooting in Niagara Falls last night. Police were called to the area of Epworth Circle and St. Lawrence Avenue just after 6 last evening for reports of a shooting. When they got there, they found a man with life-threatening injuries. He was taken to hospital. That's where he was pronounced dead. Niagara police haven't released any suspect information just yet.
And the OPP is stepping up efforts to tackle impaired driving after a significant increase in offenses between 2018 and 2023. 385 people were killed in alcohol-related crashes on OPP patrolled roads. The number of impaired driving collisions rose steadily during that period, with a 31% jump in 2023 compared with the previous 5 years. Impaired driving charges are also up 33% over the same 6-year period.
And a series of grass fires temporarily shut down train lines along the border between Toronto and Vaughan this morning. Crews in both Toronto and Vaughan were called to fires in at least 3 separate locations, including near Stills Avenue and Highway 400, Kill Street and Stills Avenue, and Western Road and Stills Avenue. They had to cut access points through fences in order to get to the fires.
Definitely the wind speeds add to the fire and the intensity, and it causes it to move along the grass lines. We've got grass lines that are in some areas up to about 4 feet tall, so it really spreads the fire.
Right now, all trains are running again. No injuries were reported as a result of the fires.
Well, happening this hour, there's a rally taking place at City Hall against certain types of evictions.
The tenant coalition, No Demo Evictions, wants the city to take action to protect demo-evicted tenants and hold developers accountable for growing the long-term stock of rental housing. This is a live look at City Hall right now. The group says demo evictions are on the rise in Toronto, and roughly 100 buildings are now slated for demolition and redevelopment.
We've asked for a moratorium on dem evictions. We've asked for rent control and rent vacancy back. But the moratorium on dem evictions we've asked for until a task force can be put in place with the stakeholders, with tenant advocates, with architects and developers, so that we can have protections in place for tenants with a task force and a moratorium on dem evictions that have been approved and already are under application.
So I'm hoping that today's actions will sway the Planning and Housing Committee to start the process of ensuring that tenants receive sufficient compensation in the construction years in order to actually remain in their communities and to rent at the current market rental rates, which are extremely high.
At present, if you count the number of apartments that are available, that's 3,000. There's close to 10,000 people that are going to be tossed on the street, and nobody's ever listened. Nobody's actually aware of it or even listening to it, or I don't know what it is. Whether they don't think it's going to happen. Yeah, it's going to happen, and a lot of us, us seniors, we're not going to live through it. I mean, we've already lost 2. And a lot of them are going to MAID because they can't see living out on the street. And I can't understand why nobody in the government or whatever is putting a stop to this.
Toronto Public Health, meantime, is hosting more Mpox vaccination clinics following a rise in cases. The vaccine clinics will be offered to eligible residents at a clinic at the 519 on Church Street between 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. tomorrow. It'll only be taking walk-ins. Another clinic will operate by appointment only from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at Metro Hall on Saturday. Mpox is a virus that spreads primarily through close contact. Symptoms include fever, headache, muscle pain, a rash, or even blisters. The vaccine is free. An OHIP card, by the way, not required.
Premier Doug Ford made an announcement in East Gwillimbury this morning and blasted the federal government for the carbon tax increase.
We have so many people here. I could fill this field, not with hundreds of thousands, millions of people that are against this carbon tax. I'm here today, we're all here today to make it clear. We stand against the carbon tax because we know Ontario families deserve to keep more money and their hard-earned money in their own pockets, not the government's, because we know Ontario businesses can't afford more costly burden.
That money has been sitting in a bank account in Ottawa, not rebated back to small firms, and I'm delighted to have the support of the Government of Ontario to get that money back as part of its call to scrap the regime altogether. 82% of small and medium-sized businesses now oppose the federal government carbon tax as a result.
Okay, Minister Bill Blair is making a housing announcement in Etobicoke. Let's check that out live right now.
Which is going to see the construction of more than 53,000 homes over the next decade. This momentum cannot be stopped, and in the upcoming budget, it will only be accelerated. Today, I am proud to announce that our government will invest an additional $400 million to top up the Housing Accelerator Fund. This fund has been crucial for us to ask more of our cities. Mayors have stepped up with bold plans to cut red tape, and we are seeing more shovels in the ground faster right across the country. And we've seen what the Housing Accelerator has been able to do. It has led to agreements with municipalities across the country to fast-track creation of more than 100,000 new homes right across Canada. And since its launch last year, the federal government has signed agreements to build more than 750,000 new homes over the coming decade. And with this new top-up of $400 million, we'll fast-track an additional 12,000 new homes over the next 3 years. Building more homes also means a need to invest in the essential infrastructure that those housing will need. It's not enough just to build homes. We have to build communities. We have to build neighborhoods. We have to build places that are good to raise your families in, safe places where people can feel welcome and enjoy a high quality of life. And to support this work, we are creating a new Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund, which is going to support new water, wastewater, stormwater, and solid waste infrastructure projects, because every neighborhood needs to be safe and needs to have those facilities. The fund will work similarly to the Housing Accelerator. Provinces and territories will need to come up with ambitious plans in order to unlock this funding. And over the next 10 years, we're going to invest an additional $6 billion in the fund to help support the provinces and territories in their plans to build more homes and to build more communities. Reinvesting in the Housing Accelerator Fund and establishing the Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund will allow us to work directly with municipalities and provinces, as well as the territories, to get meaningful action underway on housing. And by working with all three orders of government, we can deliver the housing supply that is needed in cities and towns right across Canada. Our government is focused on building an economy that is fair to every generation and to every Canadian, one that everyone is able to work hard and to achieve their goal of home ownership. Thank you very much, and we'll be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. We'll now start the question and answer period. On va commencer la période des questions des médias. If you have a question, just raise your hand and we'll pass the mic over to you. Please state your name and outlet, and everyone will get one question and one follow-up.
Good evening, Minister. Kurt Brownage with Global News. You said to Global News while in Kyiv that the Sky Ranger R-70 drones would be delivered in April. Just wondering how many have arrived in Ukraine so far.
I'm afraid I don't have an update on that, but I did take it up with Teledyne when I was out here in Etobicoke with my two colleagues when we were introducing the acquisition of 800 new drones. I asked the people of Teledyne when they would be able to begin the delivery, and they told us that that would begin at the end of March and early April. And so I'll happily follow up with them to make sure that they maintain that commitment. And while I was in Kyiv as well, I had the opportunity to meet with their Minister of Strategic Industry. We talked about the value of the Teledyne drones that we are supplying. They are outstanding pieces of equipment. They've been used by militaries around the world in various requirements. But I talked with the Ukrainian minister. We are also exploring ways in which Canadian industry and Ukrainian industry can work together, can collaborate, to benefit from the learnings that they've had in their battlefield experience against Russia in Ukraine, and at the same time by leveraging the remarkable ingenuity and innovation of Canadian industry. And so we're working hard to bring them together, and we'll also make sure that the promised delivery of the 800 drones that we've acquired will move forward as expeditiously as possible.
Follow-up question? Okay, we'll go to the next question.
Good afternoon, Minister. Blair Tom Stefanak, CP24. Proponents have argued that the federal housing crisis or the housing crisis within the country is largely driven by a combination of interest rate factors as well as accessibility factors, and then, of course, bringing new immigrants into the country as well as temporary residents. Do you feel that the federal government is doing enough? I mean, the criticism has been that there's too many people coming in, not enough homes, and then there are no real mitigating factors as to the proportionality of ownership. Individuals, for example, can go out and they can buy 5, 6, 7 homes, condos, etc. And this, of course, detracts from individual ownership within the market. So, in your opinion, is the federal government doing enough to tackle this? Is there anything that you would like to see done? And then if you could comment on the RCMP report that indicated there was a concern recently with civil unrest as a result of tensions and costs within the country.
Yeah, well, certainly. I think it is very clear that our government is absolutely committed to increasing the supply of homes in communities right across the country. We recognize that in order to assist that in occurring, we're going to have to, we've heard from municipalities and from many of the provinces that they need some help in investing in infrastructure, help in clearing away some of that red tape. And we've been making very, very significant investments in increasing the supply of housing. As well, our immigration minister is looking at appropriate levels of immigration coming into this country to support our economy, to make sure that we can build those homes, but also to acknowledge and to deal with some of the pressures that immigration influx has created in some of our communities. We understand that all three orders of government have a very significant responsibility here. Municipalities, the provinces, and the federal government have to work together. And all of the programs that we brought forward with substantial new funding, as I've said, $6 billion additional for infrastructure spending, is an acknowledgement of some of the challenges municipalities, towns, and villages right across this country face. We need good partners in all orders of government, at the municipal and provincial level, in order to cut through the red tape and get the housing built. I think for the concern that I would have in Toronto and in my own community, we know that many people have been struggling even finding affordable rental accommodation. And so a big part of our investment here in Toronto is also is taking place in order to accelerate the building of affordable rental accommodation so that people who may aspire to owning a home can have some place to live in the interim.
And further to that point, Minister, we know that you're building a number of homes over the next decade, although given the rate of immigration as well as the rate of expansion, that simply doesn't seem to be enough mathematically. Is there anything else you can do, or are you looking at other means, possibly indications for trying to expand other cities out in the western provinces, out in the prairies? We know Vancouver, Victoria, those are quite dense populated areas as it is. Toronto, the GHTA, very dense population area. Are we looking at growing some municipalities out in the prairie provinces at all to sort of mitigate that?
Our programs are federal programs. They're accessible to municipalities right across the country. We are finding good municipal partners in every part of Canada, and we've been working with all of the provinces and territories because each of them have somewhat unique, housing challenges in their jurisdictions, and it's only by working with the local municipal governments and with the local provincial and territorial governments that we're able to provide the supports that'll get the job done in those jurisdictions. And we have a very good partner here in the City of Toronto. There's a very strong interest in the municipality to get the job done. We know that the municipalities right across Ontario are keen to move forward in building housing because they're facing the pressures, and they want to make sure that housing is accessible to the next generation of Canadians. But in communities right across the country, we see that different parts of the country are facing different challenges. Certainly in northern Indigenous and remote communities, investing in housing is a keen priority for us and them as well. We're going to continue to tailor our response and the supports for their communities to get the housing built that they need in their communities.
Any other questions?
All right, Minister Bill Blair making a housing announcement in Etobicoke this afternoon. This after the federal Liberals, the Justin Trudeau government, announced a $6 billion housing program ahead of the federal budget. That will, of course, be tabled later this month. And the minister says this is going to create thousands of new homes in the city of Toronto. We'll have more on that announcement throughout the day. Coming up next on CP24 Live at noon, we'll tell you what you need to know about the spring storm that's moving in. Stay with us for that conversation.
And the wife of the man accused of killing a Toronto police officer is testifying in court today. Ida Sheikh was with her husband and child in the vehicle that fatally struck Constable Jeffrey Northrop in the parking garage below City Hall nearly 3 years ago. This morning, the Crown questioned Sheikh about the events leading up to the incident. Sheikh testified that she did not know Northrop and his partner were police officers when they approached their vehicle dressed in plain clothes that night.
Well, a potent early spring storm is expected to move in to the GTA today.
And for a closer look at what to expect, we're joined by Environment Canada meteorologist Trudy Kidd. Trudy, good afternoon. This system, no climate change, we have to also talk about, this is going to be a pretty significant system. So what all are you looking for?
Right. So we have a low pressure system that's affecting southern Ontario right now. We're expecting rain today, mostly for areas like southwestern Ontario, but for northeastern Ontario, areas like Sudbury, North Bay, those areas are going to get more into the snow. We might even see thunderstorms this evening for areas like Toronto and westward, southwestward as well. And people may have noticed that it's pretty gusty out there. Tonight, those winds are going to intensify, and combined with the rain really moistening the ground, that could cause some trees to fall, and there's a potential they could fall on power lines, creating local power outages. So that's something we're looking out for. Now, that rain is going to continue into tomorrow. And then Wednesday night, areas like Toronto, north of Toronto, even Kitchener, those areas, we're going to see the rain mixing into snow. And if you're in eastern Ontario, we're looking at a lot of snow.
Okay. We're looking at a lot of snow. It's kind of a dangerous combination, right? Thunderstorms, as you pointed out, strong winds. This is a live shot of the conditions. You can see people are already out and about with their umbrellas. So the active weather has started to move in. Do you think this is going to be a two-day affair?
Yeah, I mean, we're already seeing rainfall for a lot of areas in southern Ontario already, and it's going to keep moving on through Wednesday overnight. And so when the rain really picks up, you want to be prepared for that. Know that if you're driving along and it doesn't seem so bad, you might be driving into an area that has heavier rainfall. That's going to reduce visibilities a little bit. Maybe you're driving northward and you're driving into the snow on Wednesday night. Again, that can reduce visibilities. The roads can get pretty slippery, so we really want people to be mindful that they should slow down, keep a lot of space between you and the vehicle in front of you.
Okay, along with that, April showers brings May flowers, but what about April snow?
Well, it does happen. I'm sorry to say for some. Yes, it's pretty typical to see a snowfall or two in April. And in fact, for Toronto, usually April sees around 4.5 centimeters each April. Now that's an average, so sometimes you're going to see a lot more, sometimes you're going to see a lot less. And really looking into April ahead, this time of year we see high temperatures around 9 degrees Celsius. Overnight, those lows are around 1 degree or so. That's pretty close to the freezing point. So if you get precipitation overnight, then there is a chance that we could see snow. And so this might not be it.
Okay. Environment Canada meteorologist Trudy Kidd, thanks so much for teeing this up for us. We appreciate this.
Thanks, Trudy.
Thanks.
And thank you for watching CP24 Live at noon. Coming up after the break.
Comedian Joe Flaherty, a founding member of the Canadian sketch series SCTV, has died. We'll have reaction coming up at 1.